Mm-hmm.
because that's how it went down when I was a Boy Scout. Okay.
So he initiated that relationship.
You could say that, but
You didn't resist it, but
I didn't stop it. I didn't
Mhm.
I didn't put my foot down and say, no, this can't happen because it's not right. My view of right and wrong was really distorted at that time, because of what I came up through. Well, it must be right. It must be okay
Feels
because,
good.
yeah, it feels good and we're all doing this and there's no complications. There's no problems. Everybody's having a great time.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it kind of started from there. And then, of course, not being able to express your feelings and emotions is a horrible thing, because when you're in a situation where now you can express yourself or your feelings, it's big.
It comes out.
Yeah, it's big. And
It's like when you haven't cried for years.
Yep.
Like, at least for me, I went years without crying. I mean, I went funeral after funeral after funeral feeling nothing for
Right.
years. And then finally something happened in my life where I just broke down.
Yeah.
And it was so big. I mean, I never
Right.
cried like that since I was like a kid, So I
Yeah.
know what you're saying.
Right. So now here's a young man that I think understands where I'm coming from, and understands my feelings somehow, that even my own wife couldn't understand. So that's pretty much the basis of that whole relationship that we had going.
So while you were able to express yourself, at the same time you had this secret life on the side from your wife.
It was a secret
And
life.
I mean, Scripture tells us that traps you,
Yep.
So
Scripture is correct.
but the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
It's interesting how the devil lures us into those positions.
And how God eventually interferes and says, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so let me tell you, I just told you how that began. Let me tell you how it ended.
Mm-hmm.
So this relationship we carried on for about a year, and it just so happens that this particular young man had a father that had been molesting his sisters, which would be the father's daughters, over a period of time, and somehow that was reported. At that time, all of the children were taken into counseling of some sort. During this counseling process, it was revealed that this boy and I had a relationship going on. And that's how I was caught and ended up going to jail for that, to the county jail on a county level, which is much different than going to a state prison. Did you want me to elaborate on any of that? Or?
Yeah, what was your experience you said 2 years you were there?
Yeah, that's the maximum time you can serve in a county jail in this state, is a 2-year term.
What were you labeled with exactly at that point as well? Like, what did the court rule?
The court ruled the actual charge that was
Yes.
the
Mhm.
conviction.
Charge that you were.
The conviction at that time was called sodomy third degree sodomy, which is, as far as sodomy goes, the less than first degree or second degree.
First degree would have been seeking someone out, forcing yourself upon them.
Right. Sodomy refers to any kind of oral sexual contact or unusual penetration, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Since it was basically an oral relationship sexually, it was sodomy third degree. Had it been any kind of penetration, the degree would have been higher. I guess that's a way to explain it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that particular statute exists anymore. They've changed it and revised it. I think it's sexual abuse or something nowadays. I'm not positive, but anyways, I did a 2-year term in the county jail, which converts to 16 months with good time. A good time knocks a third off your sentence, so that converts to 16 months out of 24.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I came back. My wife stuck with me through all of that. The children were very small. my children were very small at the time. And from that point, I wasn't in scouting anymore, obviously. And came back and reestablished my life and raised the kids. It was about 10 years later. I was out mowing my grass one day. Excuse me, I was mowing the grass in my front yard, and a car pulled in my driveway I didn't recognize. A young man got out of the car, and it turns out it was the young fella that I had a sexual relationship with when I was a Boy Scout leader. And he was so sorry for everything that took place. He said, I never meant for anything like that to happen, but he told me that after his dad got arrested, all the rest of the kids were put into counseling, and he was one of them. And through counseling, it came out that he was having some kind of a sexual relationship with an adult. They tried to pin it on his dad, but he defended his dad, of course, and then it came out that it was me, and that's how that happened. But we took a walk up through the woods, and he was so apologetic, but I told him,
Wow.
Don't worry about that. That was not your fault. There's, it's nothing to be upset about. What happened is what happened, and we all survive, and we just keep moving on.
That's amazing. That's amazing that he would, after everything that you'd been through for a 2-year sentence in a county jail, that, he would come back to you and apologize for all that. I don't know how many people would do that.
Well, probably anyone that truly had a relationship of some sort.
Right.
Of course, not in a genuinely abusive type of situation. So there is a big difference there.
Was your relationship with your wife well at that point? Did it
Yeah.
get better? Did she, you said she stuck around, but was there a trust?
There was a trust. My wife was brought up in a Christian home and raised a lot different than I was. And she hung in there and was there for me during the dark times, you might say. So when I did get back home, we had a really good family life, raising the kids and doing all the stuff that I never got to do when I was a kid. But there came a point in our relationship where it got stagnant. I'm not putting blame anywheres because there's a lot of different factors that contribute to what happened in our marriage. Probably one of the major ones is my inability to express myself properly with my feelings and emotions at that time. This was still with me. It's not something that just goes away.
Yeah.
My confusion about sexual matters, even though I love my wife to death and sex was good between us, I had those early experiences that kept gnawing at me and tried to explain to her, and that maybe that was not a good thing to try to do, was try to explain to her what I had been through and what I was feeling and why do I have this attraction at times. And, it was just a very confusing thing to her. And so I might have been pushing her away and not even knowing it. But during this time, the internet was evolving, and my wife had gotten on the internet and started talking to other people. Back at that time, chat rooms were like one of the big adventures at first.
Yeah.
With the internet. All in all, I wasn't as emotional and loving and all of this that I could have been as a husband.
You weren't available in some ways.
Right. Yeah. And she was feeling pressure, as probably most women do, being a mother and a wife, and she was tired of that. And she met somebody on the internet in a chat room that enticed her. And because of all the other things happening in our life at the time, she wanted out as a wife and a mother. And she made it clear to me. So we decided to end our marriage contract. Mutual agreement between the two of us. Me working off my confused state of mind and not quite understanding family value, never being taught the importance of family growing up and what family means. It's just amazing that I didn't have that. And her going through some sort of midlife crisis at the time, she was ready to book. And so we went, saw an attorney, both of us, the same attorney, and, filed for divorce, got our kids together. They must have been around 10, 12, 14, around those ages. Got them around the kitchen table and told the kids that we were going to get divorced. I'll never forget the two youngest ones, very little reaction, but the oldest one, I never saw tears shoot out of a person's eyes like they did with her. They didn't run down her cheeks, they shot out of her eyes. And that's when I knew that we had just made a huge mistake.
Yeah.
So she took off for the West Coast at Thanksgiving time and was going for like 2 weeks to meet this other fella and then coming back, and we were going to decide, what to do from that point on. Well, in the midst of that 2 weeks, she had called one night and left a message on the answering machine because I had the kids out somewheres, and we came back and there was a message, and she said, "Hi kids, this is Mom. I just have something really important to tell you. I will call back at such and such a time tonight." So I was, oh, okay. So I got the kids all excited, So, okay, Mommy's going to be calling back. We'll put it on the speaker so we can all hear. So then that time came and the phone rang and it was her. And I put it on the speaker. I said, okay, all the kids are right here. What is it? They want to know. And she said, "I'm not coming back."
Wow.
Whoa.
So that was...
So tears shooting more, maybe, a little?
Yeah, from my eyes.
Wow.
So I just hit the switch and hung up and had 3, kids to deal with on that one.
How old were you at this point?
Mid-30s.
Mid-30s.
Yeah.
So you had to take on the kids at that point.
I did. I had all 3 kids. The children had the option of being with whoever they wanted to be with. We didn't take it to court. So I had the kids for the first year. And my oldest daughter was going through her changes and approached me and said, "Dad, I think I'd like to go out and be with Mom." So I thought that was a good idea. So she went out to live with her mom, stayed out there. A few years later, my youngest daughter went through the same thing, and she wanted to go be with her mom. And she did. And in the meantime, at one point, my son went out to visit for the summer with his mom, and she kidnapped him and wouldn't let him come back because the guy that she was with at the time told her how much money she could get if she took this to court and got full custody of the child.
Right.
Brutal.
He had been divorced 3 other times. He knew the ropes.
Wow.
So they locked him in a room and wouldn't let him have any communication with me. Took away phones, computers, everything. He was about 14 at the time. Somehow, he figured out a way to contact me to this day, I have no idea, and he hasn't been able to explain it to me, how he got some kind of an email message off to me through some weird way that he figured out